Welcome back. Our next presenter is a good friend of mine, Savannah Lazzara. Her talk today is titled, You Are the Weakest Link, Attacking Organizations Through the Human Element. Thank you so much for supporting, as always, the Red Team Village and Grey Hat, Savannah. I really appreciate your help in here and looking forward to your presentation. Please take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Savannah Lazzara, and the title of my talk today is You Are the Weakest Link, and it's about attacking organizations through the human element. So before we get started, a little bit about myself. I am a security consultant at Optiv on the Attack and Pen team, which is inside the threat management practice at Optiv. I'm also an ambassador for Hack the Box, and I also help assist with coordinating some of the events for Red Team Village. So at Optiv, I usually perform security assessments. That includes any vulnerability assessments, penetration tests, and social engineering exercises. My expertise is social engineering, so I really enjoyed making this presentation, and I'm looking forward to everyone seeing it. So the agenda that I created for this presentation is broken up into physical engagements, fun pretexting, and phishing. So for the physical engagements, I kind of broke it down with the process, how to case a building, badge creation, and any documents that you need to create for the actual engagement. And then so for the fun pretexting, I broke it down with the process and tips, and then the same thing kind of for phishing. I go through the process and kind of recommend any tips that I do have. So for the first portion, which will be physical engagements, I put together kind of this overview. And so you can kind of see it's like a step-by-step of like the arrow going down and everything. So whenever I receive any physical engagements at Optiv, the first kind of thing that I think is I have to create a game plan. And depending on, I guess, what organization you're at and how much time you actually do want to put into it. So 24 hours prior to the engagement, or you could be putting in up to like 2 weeks ahead of time, kind of just planning it like bit by bit. That's usually what I do. I kind of get an understanding of where this building is going to be located and try to do just like piece by piece to kind of prevent last minute, like, oh no, like what do I do for this scenario? Or trying to come up with ideas last minute is just way more stressful than it needs to be. So also preparing a kit that you're going to be taking with you and kind of preparing it too, like ahead of time. So bringing items that be relevant based off of any recon that you've done for that client. So that includes documents, IDs, badges, stuff like that. And I am going to be going through badge creation on the call. So then the next step would kind of be to carry out that attack scenario whenever you're on site and executing the engagement according to whatever plan you did make. And then post-engagement, kind of reviewing how your engagement did go and how you can improve in the future. And I really can't stress enough how important this is, because some people will just go for like each engagement, and you kind of need to look back to see like what didn't go right that you can maybe improve on in the future, because that could really help you down the road whenever you're trying to help improve yourself, but you don't really have any notes to kind of look back on. So the next slide I have is then like a breakdown of all of these elements that I just went through. So for the physical engagements process, I kind of broke this down into detailed descriptions of each component that I discussed in the previous slide. So for creating that game plan, this is where you're going to be performing that heavy recon, kind of seeing what jobs could be available at the client site that are open that they can expect for someone to kind of ask about. You want to see how many employees are going to be on site. So the best way to do that is looking at the aerial view of Google Maps of the parking lot. If this is a place that the client site does not mention that there's not a lot of employees, and you show up there and there's like 2 people and these 2 people just know each other, it'll be very odd that you just showed up and there's only 2 other people and they know that they're not expecting anybody else. However, if there's a bunch of cars there, it's kind of going to be one of those things where you're going to be less noticeable compared to everybody else. And you also want to find those relevant scenarios based on their business type. So seeing if they have like any interns, seeing if they could have any potential contractors coming by, things like that. And then you also want to map out every entry point of that facility, because if you are inside and you need to know how to exit, you need to know where you kind of entered and where you can be able to exit. So for preparing the actual kit, this is just like a term, not like, it doesn't have to be an actual kit, it's kind of what you make of it, kind of bringing anything that you might see as useful for engagements. I do mention in this presentation some of the things that I find as useful. So whenever you're preparing anything you want to bring, you can kind of see based off of social media, any pictures on the company's website, stuff like that. If they're posting a lot, are they using any badges? So you could also kind of use Google Maps of like the street view, like trying to zoom in, maybe be able to see it like that. But mostly it's going to be on the social media with people posting it and they don't realize that their badge is in it and it's on their belt, on their shirt, whatever. So that's what I have on there based off the photos of Google Maps, Facebook, Instagram, etc. You kind of want to see how these badges look, and it's not always going to be on the company social media. You need to kind of dig through people's personal social media. I can't tell you how many times I've found like straight up badges when people just start. I mean, I'm sure everyone else sees this too, but people just post their badges and I'm like, oh, I'm just going to screenshot that just in case I ever need it. And then ensure, like, if you're going to bring anything special equipment wise, that you do have that at least like a week ahead of the engagement. So for the next element that I have here is before your actual attack. It's like the attack scenario. So you need to make sure your point of contact has notified anyone that does need to know on site. It's really bad if the point of contact knows the day of, and I have had this happen where they forget to notify the specific people, because then those specific people are going to be on their toes and it's going to be harder to kind of get through. And then you also want to make sure you kind of have that get out of jail free card. When I refer to that, it's going to be that documentation that your company does have, that you carry around, and if anything does happen, it's showing that you're authorized to be there. It has all the right legal language to be able to be there. And if there are multiple consultants, you kind of want to map out the building to kind of show, if one person's in one building, like what building is your coworker in, like A1 or B1 kind of thing, because there can be engagements where it could be a large area and you need to know kind of how to communicate what building you are in. And then kind of making sure you have all your recon evidence collected prior. So just making sure you've done like a thorough gathering of any of the recon things that you do need, and making a game plan, and also, like I was saying, like casing the building, which is kind of like this done through Google Maps and stuff like that, and getting a good understanding of any of the entry points. So the next slide kind of goes into how I perform casing of the building or buildings. So if there are multiple buildings, I will kind of map it out and kind of show any of the entry points, the employee vehicles, and then, like I was saying, like having the numerical like A1 or B1. So in this case, I did B1. This is a stock image, just as a FYI. This isn't like a client image or anything. But I just wanted to use an example to kind of show the one way in, one way out, and then any of the entry points. On some of those roofs, I've seen some of my coworkers have told me that they've been able to get in through there, because people don't think about that kind of stuff, and they're just wide open and unlocked, because you wouldn't really think like nobody's going to climb up there. Like, that's not going to happen, but people will climb up there if they really want to get in. And so I have all these mapped out with all these buildings and everything. So I just find that it's a really good kind of reference for yourself and for if you have multiple consultants like on an engagement. So that's all I have to say really for that slide. So the next slide that I have is about badge creation. So these are kind of like a preview of some of the badges I have made. I've blurred out like any of the client associations or anything, and then some of these weren't even related to the client, but I kind of used say organizations that were nearby that would kind of make me look like I was kind of meant to be there. So say if you're in an area that has some type of association with, say, a newspaper, any of the business journals, stuff like that, that you can kind of reference to say, I'm here to do this as a reporter, or kind of making fake employee badges, or even a student card as well. So for the first one on this list right here, I was not able to find, say, an employee badge. Like all their social media was very clean. Nothing on there kind of revealed what their actual badges looked like. So I just kind of made one made one up based off of what I kind of thought it could potentially look like, using the exact like RGB colors of the company's like branding, using the company's logo, making it look nice. And it ended up being like almost 85% match. So it was very unnoticeable that it wasn't the exact match of the actual badge. Someone who really was a big mentor for me for this is my boss, Travis. So Travis is the one who showed me all of this about with physical engagements. So all of this kind of came from him. That's why I have like shout out Travis. So we usually, whenever now when I'm performing any of these physical engagements, I really collect a lot of hotel keys, because those hotel keys can be used as actual badges. And I'll kind of like show you too, because I have some of the stuff right by my side, but I was just going to go through each of these items real quick. And then also having a badge clip, PVC card punch, sticker paper, scissors, knife, razor blade, and then using nearby FedEx or Kinko's. And then also, I have it as optional, but I'd highly recommend getting it because it makes it look extremely real, is 3-inch clear Gorilla Tape. So the reason for the Gorilla Tape is because it kind of has, well, it basically is, it feels like the same type of material that would be actually used on a badge, that makes it shiny, water resistant, and it literally makes it look like a real badge. So for the sticker paper that you would initially start off with, it would look like this. This is the one I would use right here. And so you're printing out like that badge that you do create. And then once you have it printed out and you cut it out, you can use this Gorilla Tape to kind of lay it over the actual badge. So you want to make sure you have the right size of the badge whenever you're creating it on like Microsoft Word, Adobe, Illustrator, stuff like that. However, whichever route you want to go. But then once you print it out on the actual sticker paper, you're going to put that sticker paper down on a hotel key. So once you have it on there, you take the Gorilla Tape and you're laying it over on both of those sides. So once that is laid down on each side and you have like the front and the back on the hotel key card and then the Gorilla Tape over it, you're going to take an X-Acto knife. So I have one here as well. So there's like a bunch of different little things in here as well, like for the X-Acto knife, but any X-Acto knife will work. And you can use the X-Acto knife to cut out around the actual part where the Gorilla Tape is. So it's the hotel key card, sticker paper, Gorilla Tape, and then you're cutting it out with an X-Acto knife. And so once that's actually cut out, it 100% looks like a real ID. And it's like really crazy. Whenever I first did it, I was like, wow, like this really looks like a real ID. And then so another element is having the actual badge clip or lanyard. So whenever I say that, these are the badge clips, kind of messed up, like because I ripped some of them off, but some of those badge clips. And then I also will buy sometimes, well, I did buy it, but I will use this sometimes, the clear ID holder, to kind of make it look a little bit more kind of realistic, however you want to make it. And then I also, this isn't on the list, but you can use anything, but I would say like to get something that you do bring whenever you're cutting out these actual badges. For me, I don't really cut them out and tie to FedEx because I feel like it looks really sketchy if someone were to walk by and just see me making fake badges and be like, what are you doing? So I always do it in like the rental car that I'm using for the engagement. And so you don't want to like rip anything in the rental car. So I did it on one of these. It's like something to protect whatever you're cutting on. And so you can kind of see like there's cuts on it from me using it. And this will prevent it from actually like going through on anything in the car. So it's just good to have so you don't ruin any surfaces that you are using. One of the times that I realized I needed that, I was using an actual cardboard box to try to cut on top of, so I didn't cut anything that was in the car or say any part of like the jeans I was wearing, stuff like that. So I just thought that was very useful to have like on the go. And they're like $5, I think, maybe 10. So yeah, that's what I use from the badge creation. And then also the other thing would be the PVC card punch. I have it right here. So for the PVC card punch, depending on if you want to put it in, say, like a lanyard or something, this is all you really need. And then you punch it to make it look like it was one of those things that has the badge on top. So I can kind of show you, like right here, you would see like that, right? That's what it would look like. Okay. So for the badge creation, I'm very OCD about it, but in a good way, because you kind of want to make it look extremely real. Bad badges aren't going to get you in. Just know that. You always want to use the exact company colors. Like, don't use like a harsh, really dark green if they have a very light green. And you can kind of find the exact RGB really quickly. Say if you just screenshot, say something from their website or their colors, and you just throw it in PowerPoint, and then you can like create a shape and say eyedrop in PowerPoint and just eyedrop that color. And right then and there you have the RGB, because PowerPoint will be able to tell you. That's one easy way that I feel like is just a really understandable way for anyone who wants to pull the RGB color, or if the company has any branding guidelines, like kind of referencing those whenever you are making the badges. And then you always want to make sure you're using like SVG graphics or any type of high resolution version of the client's logo. You don't want to have like a really blurry logo on top of the badge and just like that looks really fake. So yeah, like using a high resolution image is the best way to go. And so say when you are making these badges and you do mess up, I probably mess up like 5 or 6 times when I'm making them, because you have to be so like still when you're cutting badges. And so sometimes I have to remake them. So I always try to have a lot of hotel cards, because I do mess up. Or if you're using a HID card or anything along those lines, it's okay to redo it, because in the long run, you want to make it look as good as possible. So I don't mean this when I say that, don't make your ID look like a toddler made it, but don't just like go with the first version that you make if you feel like there's issues, like making sure all the bubbles are like rolled out, stuff like that, because someone's going to be like, why are there all those bubbles on like that person's ID? Because like in the light, whenever it's reflecting off of it, it's going to look obvious. So just redo it. It's okay. Like, just make extra copies of the sticker paper. It's gonna be okay. So the next slide I have is for like document creation. So I've had scenarios where I'll bring like fake authorization documents for whatever like role I'm playing. Like, I obviously have the real get out of jail free card with me, but this is documents relating to the part that I'm saying that like the person I'm saying that I am that I'm not. So making sure that your fake documents match the scenario that you are doing, because I have had people, I'll be like, I can show you like these documents, and that is what kind of confirms what they think that I'm there for is, when it's actually not. They're just like fake documents I put together and threw on the client's logo. Say if like you're going to be an auditor, kind of looking up like what do an auditor's documents look like, or referencing like someone's like name and then adding that as like a signature and throwing that on the document. And you want to make sure that these look believable, because like the badges, if they look really fake and if someone's looking at them, they're going to be like, yeah, that's not real, so you need to leave. So making sure these look good is always, I would say, I'd stress that, and then the badges as well. So this is kind of like the end I have for the physical engagements. So for the considerations, the things that could go wrong whenever you are like going in and you're speaking with someone inside of your company is you could trip up on words. You could name drop the wrong person. You could deal with the escalating situation. You could go to the wrong building. I have heard that one. One of my coworkers told me that they had gone to the wrong building on accident, and I think they were able to get themselves out of it and kind of proceed with the engagement. But just making sure you're going to the right one. And then commonly forgot items is logging time, collecting evidence, having photo proof of some of the things that you did do. and ensuring nothing that you have is left behind unless you're intentionally trying to leave it behind. So for the logging time part, I usually will use my phone. I'll have like a binder or like portfolio of some sort, and I'll wrap my phone like this, and I'll record it, because whenever I'm doing any of these engagements, I'm trying to play that part, and it's really hard for me to remember any names that someone does mention. And then it also like will show what time it is on your iPhone, because or Android or whatever, because it shows you what time it was recorded, so you can kind of reference that back. So I always do that whenever I am doing a physical engagement, and I found that it really does help, because you can reference faces, names, whatever you need, and showing what you did do in the engagement to kind of be able to back up if the client does have any questions regarding like what you did do during the engagement. Okay, so for the next part of the presentation, I have phone pretexting. So phone pretexting is the same thing as phishing. It's just another term for it to kind of prevent the mixing up of phishing and phishing, because it can sound very similar over the phone. So phone pretexting. So I broke this down for the process into, it's kind of, some of the things I do mention here will be the same, similar things for phishing, physical engagements, and then phone pretexting, like for the initial part with like doing the heavy recon. So the first thing I have here is like researching the client. So you can utilize tools such as like Black Sheep Wall, Shodan, etc. to find information related to the company. Looking at like their subdomains to stuff like that to kind of see what kind of products they're using within their company that's external facing, and then going through any social media posts, trying to find potential high priority clients, and not clients, high priority employees that can be name dropped over the phone, and seeing how people are interacting over LinkedIn. So I know this like sounds very odd, but I've had really good success with it, kind of really stalking and looking really deep into some people's LinkedIns of who is like liking like who's post at this company, because then you can kind of see like they're probably know each other, and they're probably talking to each other more so than someone who's not liking someone else's post and stuff like that. And then creating those relevant scenarios based off the business type, which is kind of relevant for all three of these types of components inside of social engineering. And so for the next part, I have for writing the scripts. So whenever you are writing these scripts, you don't want it to be something that you're looking at that you don't want to read it word for word. It's supposed to be something in front of you to kind of have as a reference. Because if somebody asks a question that you don't know and it's not on that sheet, you need to know how to respond. And you need to respond very quickly, because if you don't, it's going to be very obvious that you don't know the answer and you're not who you say you are. So kind of whenever I'm in that situation, if somebody says, oh, like, what's your employee ID? I usually pretend that I'm looking for like, oh, like I have it written down, because I mean, that's very common for people to write down stuff like that. I mean, people still write down passwords, but saying you have it written down and then kind of looking through fake paperwork that you have, like just like throwing stuff around like in the back, and they'll kind of think that you're actually looking for it and you do have it written down somewhere, and then saying that you can't find it, and I swear like I wrote it down, like, oh, like it's okay, like we can just give it to you, just make sure you write this one down so you don't lose it again. And so like that's step one, getting the employee ID, because now you have some type of verification that if you're not talking to that one person and say you need to call back for during the phone pretexting process, you can reference that employee ID that was given to you, because now you know how it's formatted, and now you know that it's not, say, it could sometimes that they're not the exact like it's not going to be like your first and last name, it's going to be a unique ID. So always reference that, always write that stuff down. And then whenever you're making these calls, I always record whenever I'm doing calls, because it's good to have a reference of what happened during the call, because like I said, for the physical part, it's hard for me whenever I'm like playing a part and you're like, I'm talking, I won't remember some of the stuff that's like mentioned on the call, so I always record it so then I can just like reference it back, and then that also helps me with what time I made the call and stuff like that. So whenever I am doing these too, I can't like stress enough how important it is to not like start out on the call being like, hi, like my name is Savannah and I'm this and I'm that and I work with the help desk and I need to change your password and can you write all these commands down? No, like, don't do that. always start with hi, my name is Savannah, and then stop. And then they're gonna be like, oh, like hi, like my name is like Austin. And then you can say, I'm with blah blah blah, and then stop, and then see how like they respond, and they're like, oh, okay, is there something like you need? And then you go in and you say, like, we were having issues, say, updating your computer last night. We need to run this update to get into your computer. Can you please visit this link, or can you please type this command? It doesn't have to be that scenario, but that's just like an example of what you can do. Or like saying that they need to log into a portal for something else, something along those lines. But stopping between each of the things that you are saying is really important, because I mean, when you're on a call with a real person, you don't just like say all these things all at once, because then it's like, oh my god, it's overwhelming. Like, don't do that. So you kind of want to make it as realistic as possible to whenever you're doing these actual phone pre-texting calls. So some of the tips that I have for the phone pre-texting is, like I was saying, always record them for reference. And then information from these calls can be very useful whenever you're, say, targeting other victims. So I've like had, for example, one person literally gave me so much information, and it was like one of the first couple calls that I was able to use that other, like the information they gave to me on all the rest of my calls, like saying, oh, like we are using this and that's why it's having this issue, so we need you to do this. So say if someone mentions this, like the type of operating system that they're using internally for their servers or something like that, like you could reference that and say that they need to be updated and so. So you can kind of tailor your scenarios as you're going through the call. So it's always good to write down any information that is given to you. And then creating a log, call log as a template is what I've had right below here. So you can use this template, and then you can kind of tailor it to however you want to, but this is kind of what keeps track of like whenever I'm doing these calls. So I thought it was really useful. So that's like a template that you could use if you want to, you don't have to. So yeah, so for the considerations, things that could go wrong, similar to the physical portion that I did go through, the tripping up on the words, acting as an employee that doesn't work at the organization anymore. So I have had that happen too, to where someone we were referencing still had on their LinkedIn that they did work there, but they didn't work there. And I was like, cool, sorry, that was the wrong person. Like, it was really hard to get out of. And then referencing that, like I was saying, referencing the person that doesn't work there anymore. And then the other thing was commonly forgot, the logging, and then ensuring calls are being recorded before starting. So please make sure that those things are done, because I promise you, like, it'll be a lot better whenever you're kind of going through everything at the end, because if you're making like 25, 30 phone calls, it's way better to be able to reference recording than to be like, oh, like what did he say again? Like, it's just easier to have it as a reference. So for the next portion of the presentation, it's going to be about phishing. So the first thing that you want to do with phishing is set up the infrastructure for it. So you're going to want to purchase a domain that's going to be similar to the client's name, like adding an I, adding an L, just making it look like, if you were to look at it quickly, it would kind of still look like the client's name. Or you can use a domain that you already do have. So using an age domain that can be used across different clients. So it's going to be something that is generic, that they're all using the same technology, and the more that they're aged, the more kind of trustworthy they're going to be with email clients. So you're also going to need to use a EC2 instance, and this is going to host your GOPHISH and your EvilGenX. So GOPHISH is a open source phishing framework. So you can kind of release the emails from there and track and see who's open it, stuff like that. It makes it really easy to kind of see what's like going on with your emails. And then also EvilGenX. So EvilGenX is a man-in-the-middle attack framework used to kind of capture the login credentials, session cookies, whenever you have it set up and you're trying to fake an actual portal like Okta, LinkedIn. There's others that they do have, like GitHub too. So it's capturing those credentials in the middle, and then it is going to like forward them along to whatever real website it is. So the person on the other side, like the victim, is going to think that they're actually authenticating to that website. And the session cookie is for the multi-factor authentication. So you can steal those cookies once someone has entered them in using a cookie editor in your browser, and you can log into someone's account with that session cookie, because that's how they're using the code that they use for multi-factor authentication. That's their cookie associated with those credentials and the multi-factor authentication. So if you have all of those cookies that you do need to log in, then like you're golden, you can just log right in. Mailgun, so I use Mailgun to set up like the MX records and have SMTP server, so like a legit one. So whenever you do set this up and associate with your domain, once you have SPIF and the DKIM records associated with it, then you can add the MX records, and it just makes your MX records and your domain just look more legit. And it provides an SMTP server associated with it. And then, so for Mailtrap, this was a tool recently shown to me by one of my coworkers. His name is Tylus on Twitter. So this is this is something that you can use to test your emails. So you can use this as, like, they give you a SMTP server and the credentials instead of like using the one for Mailgun, just as like a testing purpose. So you can add those into Mailtrap, and it's just going to intercept the emails you send. They're not actually going to go to anyone. So whenever you're like actually testing the emails, you could have them be intercepted and go to there, and it's going to analyze one, like your domain, the HTML associated inside the email, and you can see how it's going to be looking on different like phones, computers, you name it. Like it's going to show you how it looks, so you can get a good idea of, is this going to be captured by spam? Am I on any blacklist? Is this domain, has it been burned and I'm just not aware of it? So that you know that before you go through everything and then you find out, like right when you're sending out, that your domain is burned and you're never going to make it past spam. So yeah, those are the things that I recommend for setting up, like infrastructure wise. So whenever you're creating that campaign, you want to gather open source information about the client, so subdomains, social media, metadata, so you can kind of put together like how you want to go in the direction of the actual campaign you are creating. So with the metadata, you can use tools like PyMeta. So PyMeta will kind of like scrape all different types of platforms and then extract any metadata within anything that's publicly available online. So this could be people's names, this could be technologies. It's really useful, and you're able to see some of the things that you would not be able to find if you're just like Googling it or just looking at like LinkedIn, stuff like that. Like this really digs into some of those, that they have PDFs, Word documents, Excel documents. So it's pulling any of the metadata that's inside of those. So the next thing is setting up the actual EC2 instance. So I usually use an Ubuntu distro, and then I set up the security group to allow 80 and then 443 from like any IP, because this is going to allow, depending on like whatever you're using, if you're going to be setting up an Evilgenix fishlet, or if you're going to be setting up like a custom portal, so with like Apache too, so you can set it up through there and have your own web server. But this is just going to be in relation to Evilgenix and then the GOPHISH. So the GOPHISH portal should only be accessible by your public IP. You don't want to have this accessible to everyone else, because it's like an administrative portal to manage your GOPHISH campaigns. So the GOPHISH port is 3333. And then you also want to make your public IP associated with being able to SSH in. So that's why I have them blurred out, because that's my public IP. So you can do your public IP /32, and then that will associate it with the individual IP. So yeah, that's it for the setting up the actual EC2 instance. So once you have all that set up and then you SSH in, you can kind of start getting everything set up. So also too, before you kind of dig into getting the GOPHISH and Evilgenix set up, you need to configure the actual DNS records associated with the domain. So pointing the domain to your EC2 instance, setting up Mailgun for your domain so you have like a legit mail server and then saving the SMTP credentials for your domain that Mailgun does give you, because you'll need this later on for GOPHISH whenever you are going to be sending out emails. So I kind of created a little table here for configuring the DNS records, the A records, the text records, and the MX records, and you could potentially have other records depending on what types of things you are using. So this is kind of just like a quick reference of all the records. So, like the mail records would be coming from Mailgun, and so like the SPIF, and then DKIM records, and then your name server, which would be for your actual Evogenics. It would be for Evogenics, like you need to have these name servers set up for it to be able to point to your EC2 instance, and then the CNAME. So these records, the mail records, will be available for you on Mailgun, and then the SPIF and DKIM, they're kind of given to you, like they're not just like made up. And the CNAME ones, that's for kind of like the www, and then any subdomains you're going to use associated with that domain, that's what those are for. So this just can be used as like a reference guide whenever you're setting up the DNS records. So the next thing that I do have on here is setting up GOPHISH. So one of my coworkers, his name is Big Boss, and that's his username on GitHub. So feel free to check out other repositories he does have. He created a really easy script to automate the setup for GOPHISH, and then it also automates the SSL certificate process with certbot. So that just makes it like 10 times easier. So that's the link to it right below there. And then so once you have everything downloaded, you can run the command right there, the gophish.sh, tach-e, tach-d, and then the domain associated that you're using for your phishing campaign. If you are going to use the same EC2 instance for GOPHISH and in Evogenics, I do recommend setting the phishing port server to 8443 instead of 443, because Evogenics is going to be using 443. So once you have GOPHISH set up, you want to start getting Evogenics set up. So you can download the repo from that link right there. And then I kind of listed down some of the commands to just get it easily set up. This is usually what I use, or I'll use the Go version and do it that way. But this is just one of the easy ways I thought I could just listen to the presentation. And then so once you have it downloaded and you go to it, you can configure the domain and configure the IP. So that IP is going to be your EC2 IP that's publicly facing, and then the domain that you're using is going to be the domain. And then depending on what type of fishlet you're going to be using, so you can use LinkedIn, Okta, whichever one, you need to add that fishlet associated with your domain, and then you need to enable it. And so once you have all that kind of like set up, then you can create a LURS link. So this is going to be the link that will be used whenever you're actually phishing people. So whenever they click on this link, they'll be redirected to whatever you have as it being redirected to. But this is the specific link that you are going to be using to kind of associate with it inside of like an email, or if you're telling someone to go visit a link, this is the link that you'll be giving someone. And then make sure you also test it too. So if it's like a login portal of like Okta or whatever, just try to test it. Obviously you would need valid credentials, but test it as much as you can, or as much as you're able to. So the next part of the presentation is about crafting the email. So you can either go the route of just doing a really simple email, which is still like good. I've found that it's good success, or crafting it specialized associated with like HTML. Whenever I've done ones that are like really simply formatted, it's like one of those emails that say like you get from someone internally at your company that's like from HR, and you kind of try to mimic like how they have it formatted. It's not gonna be anything crazy, like say like you have an Arial like font like 10, 12, whatever, and it's just like a basic email, and then the link inside of it is like the OneDrive or the Google link, whichever one they're using. You can look at their DNS records to kind of like tell which one they are using for their organization. But just embedding that link in, because that's so common for people to do in emails, like, hey, like the link's below for this, like please check it out, or please review this. And then you could embed, say, the Evogenics like LURS link that I was discussing, and it'll take them to a portal that may have them like log in to their like OneDrive or their Office 365 and have it to where like, oh, like that, yeah, I have to log in. Like they're not even gonna like think twice because you always like have to log into those. Or if you create like a custom HTML like web portal, which I've done that too, and kind of branding it to how that they have their colors and how they have their logo and stuff like that. So kind of referencing some of those things I was mentioning with the actual physical engagements, really paying attention to how their branding is, because if the branding is just like way off and it looks like really fake, like no one's going to enter in their credentials. But if you have it look really good, you can get a lot of credentials. So that's just like a sample little email that I kind of like said, like this information about whatever they're saying related to HR, and then please visit the link below to view the document. And that like link, so it's not going to be like a whole link, it's going to be embedded into the text of the company name, 2020 employee policy, and that will be whenever they click on it, it'll take them to whatever link that you're having them go to. And it's just a very basic email, but that's like how people talk to each other inside of actual organizations. So you don't need to like go really crazy, but if you do need to go crazy and use the actual vendor that is not internal, so it's not going to be an internal employee, it's going to be something they use like GitHub or stuff like that. You can pull like actual emails associated with like GitHub that you've received, and then play with the HTML from there, so it doesn't get caught by any spam filters if there's any like links inside of it. So the next thing is testing the email with Mailtrap. So like I was saying, Talis is the one who showed me this, and it's really helpful whenever you're conducting phishing campaigns because you can kind of see the statistics associated with your email. So it's mailtrap.io that you can get this set up, and then instead of using the Mailgun's SMTP server, you can use the Mailtrap's SMTP server before you're actually releasing anything, and so it can intercept it, and then you can test these emails and see if they're going to be kind of flagged whenever they're going through. Like this is used for people who are in marketing. They're trying to prevent from being ended up in spam because they obviously want to hit the consumers with the emails that they're sending out and not just always go to spam. So this helps them with that. So this is kind of like what it looks like, the spam report. It's a scale to 0 to 5. So this one that I had was a 1. You kind of want to be 1 or below to kind of be not rated as spam, at least from my perspective whenever I've used it. And then the next slide I have is checking to see if your domain is burned. So they do have a blacklist report. So this is kind of what it looks like. So you can see the domain and the IP associated with it, and you can see if anything has caught it and it's saying it's listed. So that means you obviously can't use the domain because it's going to be blocked. So that's all I have for the presentation. I really hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on any of the platforms below. So Twitter, Discord, LinkedIn. I'd be happy to answer any questions. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you.